Greetings, everyone. I'm Cornelius Moore, co-director of California Newsreel and a film curator mainly for San Francisco's Museum of the African Diaspora. I'm very pleased to be in conversation with director John Ogunmuyiwa, director of Precious Hair and Beauty. Welcome, John. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Cornelius. Thanks for having me. And,
Oh, sure.
Thanks for saying my name.
Okay, good. So Precious Hair and Beauty was at this year's Sundance Film Festival. And in that program, it was described maybe by you, John, as an ode to the madness and mundanity of the high street. I think we, in the US, we maybe say Main Street.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I guess because obviously because the UK is quite a bit older, and I think we have like I guess it would be like in maybe certain smaller towns in the States where you have like your kind of street where you have your shops, like your barber shop, your food shop, everything. We have those kind of all kind of still quite central. So yeah, it's based on those kind of spaces where you have everything all within like a 200-meter, 500-meter span.
Mm-hmm. And it's told through the window of a classic West African hair salon, and black hair salon, the barbershops play a similar role everywhere. Yeah, I think people being the atmosphere and being boisterous and people waiting and people watching TV, and it's really kind of community center. And I enjoyed it, and I was chuckling all along with it all throughout. What's your connection with the story? And that's my first question.
Yeah, well, I guess it's kind of by nature of, I guess it's the similar spaces or similar kind of thing in terms of diaspora and that the idea of being black and also Nigerian, and you find barbershops, hair salons, that are kind of spaces where it's usually quite a safe space in terms of like where people go in, and it's kind of, I think everyone's allowed to kind of be their own, because I find actually sometimes my household growing up inside is Nigerian, but then outside you kind of, it's a blend and it's a mix, and it's the same for like my Caribbean friends. But the barbershop is, and the hair salon is like a space where you're able to kind of take your inside and kind of you can kind of bring it outside. And so obviously by the nature of me growing my hair, I had to learn the lessons of going to the salon and making sure I'm the first in the chair. Otherwise, spend the whole day, 10 minutes, that's been me. And so kind of through my experience of going to the hair salon and finding the different aunties and just watching, I kind of was like, oh wow, there's a lot going on. Like and that's kind of how kind of, it's like you're just watching life happen through the perspective of the aunties and whatnot. Everyone loves to comment on what's going on outside as well as what's going on inside. And it's like, oh, this is like its own little film.
So is Precious Hair and Beauty a real salon?
No, but like the essence of it is kind of, is very true. Like I think like a lot of those moments I've seen. So kind of someone coming in, the owner coming in, people arguing in the street outside, and people commenting on what's going on outside. You go into house, and most times I'm not say, like there's this place in London called Peckham, but there's especially a lot of like say Nigerian aunties who set up shops. So when you're going inside there, and I'm from like Yoruba, but there's different tribes. So sometimes where I've gone in, they're speaking a different tribe language, but inside, and it's all of them. And then they have music, they're watching films, and so then you're kind of like, oh yeah, it's quite interesting. So a lot of what you see in the film is kind of based on moments that I think have happened to me or friends or whatnot. So it's quite, I think I would like to think it's quite true to life, most of it at least.
Well, there's so much in it because I've not been to London, but it's in South London, and it seems like on a working class neighborhood, but maybe something that's in transition. You have like the council flats
Mm,
and
mm, mm.
other immigrants, people from other parts of Africa, the Caribbean, and there was an Iranian guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's like a little comment on the people because you
Mhm.
find, weirdly enough, with a lot of like black owned hair shops and a lot of black owned shops that are actually not really owned by black people, and it's usually actually, I think it tends to be maybe Southeast Asian or kind of more not Mediterranean, I guess like Iranian. Um, but the relationships are quite cool sometimes. But it's just, it was kind of like a little, oh yeah, something that you notice, like some of the hair shops actually aren't owned by the people who kind of really who are the customers. So it's just like yeah, but it's quite a mix because you have loads of working class people and then loads of middle class people starting to come into areas, and then you have, it's just a big melting pot.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, the way that you sort of presented the middle class people, you got an idea that, oh, to me anyway, that, oh, they're new, they have no connection necessarily with the shop, but they're passing by,
Mm.
and they're carrying whatever their new fangled thing they bought in some other neighborhood.
Mm,
So
mm,
it's, I mean,
mm.
it's very clever how you introduce all those different elements um, into the film.
Oh, no, thank you. Yeah, I find it quite interesting in terms of yeah, because I guess there's a mix of like, I think growing up, and I think the same thing happens in the States. Like I know like places like was like Brooklyn and like say, yeah, loads of places that were kind of undesirable, at a time are now kind of being kind of populated because obviously first it's cheaper. And it's cool, the environment kind of grows, but I find at least that a lot of people I find, first of all, a lot of people kind of always love the idea of, yeah, there's this lovely, lovely Caribbean shop, and this guy who I buy my food from, or like there's this salon, West African, but it's like texture. There's never really a connection there. It's more something that kind of, I guess, it seems cool and it seems nice to tell people. So I guess in those moments, it's kind of, I feel like it's ideas of connection because yeah, like a lot of people come in, but I don't feel like they necessarily embed themselves into the community. But they like the aspects of the community,
Mm.
how it feels. But you're never really going inside. You're never really talking to the aunties. Kind of just like, oh, it's really nice. So yeah, it's kind of again a little trying to do a little commentary
Mm-hmm.
there.
And it's a particular period where they're not overwhelming because once they come in, this things things might indeed change,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
things get expensive. Yeah.
Expensive and whatever the cultures, that people are
Mm,
loud and
mm,
we
mm,
want
mm.
we like our place quiet. This
Yeah, yeah,
under
yeah.
control.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
the
But
other
no,
thing, no, I'm
yeah.
sorry, go
No,
ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, the other thing also noticing is about the way that people in the shop were relating to the television and what was on the screen and sort of
Mm,
getting engaged in the story.
mm.
Um, and I mean, I don't know what people were watching, but I assume that maybe was it a Nollywood or film or
Yeah,
what?
yeah. Could you find through my own experiences, it's kind of like weird enough when I go because I think even my hair's a bit messy right now. I'm a bit overdue, but the last time I went in, they're either really playing really in like some Afro beats, or it's like a church service, um, or Nollywood. So one second, I'm just gonna put my headphones.
Mm.
And so it's quite interesting that you kind of find them usually. So in the film, they're kind of watching Nollywood because that's what's going on, and I find it quite fascinating because when I go to do my hair, it's not really the conversations with me. It's not really, we're not trying to necessarily always converse. It's more kind of, there's other things going around that it's like they're on the phone, their friends coming here, they're talking whilst doing my hair, and it's cool. And so yeah, like in the film, it was kind of trying to play an ode to that. So like, also shout out kind of Nollywood and how kind of important that's kind of been in like, I guess it's like as much as there's the not the joke of it, but then how big it's become and like the how it kind of, yeah, where it's kind of come from and how it's kind of grown, but it's always kind of been in the culture. So it was just a little shout out there.
And this is the generational kind of communication where there's one of the the stylist is talking about what, oh no, they, one of the customers talking about what's all the yaga
Jagger, yeah, Jagger,
yaga
Jagger.
yaga music, and then so which I'm not familiar with, but maybe that's something you could elaborate on what it is.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of maybe it's a like a little kind of thing that my mum like, because my mum likes contemporary music, but you know, fun sometimes, you know, it'd be like, I think there's differences in the types of music, and because sometimes, you know, people feel it's like it might be too sexual, or it might be too, I know my mum's always like, that it doesn't even matter if it's like hard rap or anything. I think she just hears the certain type of drums and she's just assuming that it's gonna be like something that's a bit offensive. And so, but saying that, also, like, you know, my mom and her friends at one point, there's that, I think is it Chris Brown, there's a song, These Girls Ain't Loyal, all these aunties, that was their jam. And so I think it was just kind of a little play on how like the generational perception of music, but then how it kind of, you know, could shift a bit because one of her friend isn't necessarily super young, she's just a bit more in tune to the contemporary. So yeah, again, just trying to play with that kind of conversation a little bit.
And just to the film itself, there's please say something about the opening montage
Oh yeah.
before the actual, before we become situated in the shop itself.
Yeah. Oh no, yeah, because I guess by so I guess like the intention of the film was to try and I wanted it to feel as real as possible, and kind of almost like embed, because obviously there's this element of something slightly surreal. I like to try and combat that with a sense of like realness and groundedness. Um, but I think by the nature of it being like fixed camera, actually, even though you're kind of just watching, it's not as real as maybe it's, because there's a certain level of like blocking, and it's kind of not picturesque, but it's not as kind of real. And so like the beginning montage was kind of an attempt to try and really kind of bring you into the world, give the context of the space, and I guess it's almost a flip of the type of, it speaks to the motif and the style of the dialogue, and the intention of the idea of it feeling quite naturalistic. So then once you've kind of gotten all this kind of, it's a handheld, mixed textures, real life, it's kind of a bit raw, and it's like, okay, I think some people have thought it was a documentary, and it's like, okay, that's kind of the feeling. And then so then when you get to this kind of world, when you get to the actual fixed camera, you're already in a space of reality to a degree, so that it helps, because obviously that, yeah, there's only one angle, which fly on the wall, it's a bit stylish, I guess, to like, it's not as real. So yeah, that was just trying to give a bit of context to the world, and then just try and bring people into a space where they're thinking that they're watching real life unfold. Yeah.
Well, thank you for talking about the fixed camera, because that was one of the questions I want to ask, and you responded even before I asked, so that's great. So I'm gonna, the spoiler alert, there's the sci-fi aspects of the film. So what do you want to say about that without, you know, necessarily giving away too much?
Yeah. I guess like, so I had this idea for a few years, and I think at the time I kind of felt I was just thinking, how come there's no sci-fi that kind of speaks to people in my world? And pardon me, on one level, it was about, I feel like sci-fi is always, growing up on say like US films and American films, the end of the world is always, the aliens always go straight to Washington, as opposed to, I'm like, what about what's going on in London? And then also on a level of being like, I guess as a Black person, I was just like, how would, like, there's no sci-fi at the time. I think there is probably a bit more now, but because it's like 5 years old, this idea, it was kind of like, there's no sci-fi that speaks to, I guess, like Black people or my culture. And so was at the time I really wanted to kind of bring that and kind of show, okay, what does sci-fi look like? How would people in my world react to that? And then kind of play into this idea of on the high street, no matter whatever, like no matter how crazy it is or how weird it gets, things always go back to normal. And just playing with that hyperbole, because you know, you see madness all the time, and I think we just become so used to just seeing crazy stuff. Like you see a crazy thing on the way to work, and then you'd be like, oh, go about your day, and then get home and then jump in the shower, and you're like, oh yeah, I just saw that person with a sword, or like that person had no, like, do you know what I mean? And you're like, oh, but you get used to it. And I think it was just trying to push that into hyperbole and really kind of be like, all right, no matter how weird it gets, things will always get back to normal. And then kind of blending that with the perspective of, say, I guess, especially like a Black UK person or someone from African. I think it's more just kind of like Black UK, Black Caribbean, African, all kind of the same in this regard. How would we react? And actually, working class as well.
Well, great. Thank you for that. And we're approaching time, and I wanted to ask you what's next for this film, Precious Hair and Beauty, and what's next for you?
I think, to be honest, trying to get it out there, kind of just want to see it. I think it's been really cool, and thank you for kind of again allowing it to be seen by more people. It's kind of, that's the reason we like, personally, we make stuff, I make stuff. And so I guess, I think for me, I'd love to try and get it seen by, you know, people who aren't necessarily in film as well, like the aunties, the people who are moving into the places, and just kind of give a bit of a perspective and kind of just to share it. And then for me, I'm just trying to work on some longer form stuff, hopefully feature stuff coming soon, been trying to write at least. And so, just kind of chipping on that journey, trying to, kind of jump into the long form. And hopefully I've got some ideas bubbling. So we just got to put the work in.
Great. Well, thank you, John.
Thank
you. You're welcome, John Ogunmuyiwa,
Yeah.
a director of
Thank
Headhunt, of Precious Hair and Beauty, and which is in Film Fest DC, Shorts Program 1. Thank you for joining us, and goodbye, and thank you to everybody else for watching this.
Thank you for having me.